So this tutorial is going to go over some Maya keyboard shortcuts that I find make the modeling process go much faster. The first one is going to be how to create objects. So in class we always go up to create polygon primitives and you have all of your options here, or you should have a poly modeling toolbar up here where you can create different primitives. But there are quicker ways to do this. And if I just have a blank scene, there's nothing in it, if I hold down Shift and hold down right click, I have all of the poly primitives that I can make. The main ones are always in the little radial menu up here, and the ones that are used less often are in the list. Once you start to remember where all of these are, you can do it fairly quickly without really opening the menu. It's a little bit faster, and Shift right click is going to be the basis for a lot of the keyboard shortcuts in Maya. You can extrude, you can bevel, combine objects, do insert edge loop, multi-cut. You can do most of your modeling tools from Shift right click, and it has a lot of your UVing tools as well. So if you go to face mode, under edit mesh you have extrude right here. You also have extrude in the modeling toolkit, and you can also have the face selected, hold down Shift, hold down right click, and you have extrude face. And I find this to be a little bit quicker than going through the menus. You can also just hold down Shift with the face selected, you will see it says extrude. You can just drag it outwards. There is a difference in these two extrusions. If I select this face and do Shift right click, extrude face, I get this menu that pops up. And if I do just hold down Shift and drag that up, that menu does not come up. The extrusion itself is the same, but there are some options here that are convenient. You can be a little bit more precise in your extrusion. You can tell how many divisions and keep faces together. You can turn that on and off. I'll show you later what that does. But do know that there is a difference between just holding down Shift, which is no options box, and the extrusion in the modeling toolkit and under edit mesh and Shift right click all have the options box. So I'm going to get rid of that, and let's make another cube. And if I select all of the faces, and I do Shift right click, extrude face, and the blue arrow will always extrude outwards uniformly, I'm going to extrude it out. And this is not the best modeling, because if I go to wireframe, you can see I have a little cube inside of a big cube. But if I go to this menu and have keep faces on, if I just click on it, and I can just left click or middle click and drag left and right, you can see that the model changes. So what it does is it does not keep these faces together. They are extruded out individually. If you did the pasta box tutorial, you might have noticed some shading errors when we folded up the plane. This is because the edges are soft and they should be hard, and you want to mesh display harden edge. However, have your object selected in object mode, hold down Shift right click. In the bottom right you have soften harden edges. If you hover over it, you can soften and harden. I'm just going to go all the way to harden, and that fixes the shading problems. And you can do it pretty quickly once you remember where all those are. So more than just extrusions, select a face, and you can bevel. So we have edit mesh, bevel, we also have modeling toolkit, bevel, and hold down Shift and right click. And once you hold down right click, you can release the Shift key, and we have bevel face. And whichever option is highlighted yellow, if you hold down middle click and drag left and right, it will scrub through the different values. Mine defaults to 3 segments. If you click on segments, left click on it, you can then middle click left and right and change that value as well. Same with all of the others. You can do more than one face at the same time. If you know that all of these faces are going to have the same bevel, shift right click and bevel. And the same thing will happen, the same bevel will happen to all faces at the same time. Let's delete that and make a new cube and give it a quick extrusion. And remember, holding down X will snap to the grid. And let's say you accidentally delete a face and you want to have it filled again. There's a very simple tool where if you just select one edge of this open face, and you go to shift right click, about halfway down you have fill hole. And if you click that, it will fill the hole with one face to cover everything. So it can give you n-gons, or if you have a very large open hole, you will have to use the multi-cut or the insert edge loops to put that geometry back in. But when it's just a simple face, it does a good job at rebuilding it for you. You can also add in edge loops. If you go up to Mesh Tools, you have Insert Edge Loop and Multi-Cut. You can also, in Object Mode, Shift, hold down right click, and you have Insert Edge Loop and Multi-Cut right here. So just go to Insert Edge Loop tool. Mine has settings from before, so you can go to the Options box. And relative distance from edge is default, and that lets you put in one edge loop wherever you want. If you want multiple edge loops, say you want to have 3, it will put in 3 that are evenly spaced. And if you want to have one edge loop right in the center, if you use multiple edge loops, but you bring that down to 1, it will always put it right in the center, because this is how it works. Very convenient to have it right in the center. There's a tool that is very similar to Insert Edge Loops, and it is called Multi-Cut. So we'll hold down Shift, right click again. To the left you have Multi-Cut. And this allows you to put in an edge loop wherever you want. So wherever you click on an edge, it will put in a new vertex. And you can make whatever shape you need. And then to close it, you just hover over your first vertex. It'll have a little triangle and it says close. Click, and then you hit enter, and it takes you out of the multi-cut. Whenever you're done with a tool, it's always good to hit Q or W to make sure that you're out of that tool. I go into multi-cut, and I go and I finish, I hit enter. The cursor is still wanting to use the multi-cut, so I hit Q, that's my move tool, and it gets me out of that, so I can go back to select. If you have loops that you do not want, you can make a new object very quickly. So say you didn't want to have 9 edge loops. If you go into your edge mode, you double click an edge, it will select that entire loop all the way around. However, you cannot just hit backspace or delete. It will get rid of the edges, but it leaves the vertices behind. So if you go into vertex mode, you can see that I still have 4 vertices that are here. So you'd have to delete those vertices as well. If you select the edge and you do shift right click, you have delete edge. That will get rid of the edge and the vertex at the same time. You can also hit control backspace or command delete on a Mac. Both will do the same thing, and it will the same as delete edge loops. Delete edge, and it will get rid of the edge and the vertex. Very important that you do not have floating vertices, because that will cause all sorts of problems later on. So make sure that you get rid of them one way or the other. So if I wanted to model something, I have, and it's not an image plane, it is a plane with an image on it. So instead of going to view, image plane, import image, I made a plane that was 1 by 1, and put a new material on it and just put this reference on it. I find it's a little bit easier to work with image planes that are actually geometry than the Maya import image for image plane. So I'm going to go into the side view, this is the front view, and shift right click, I'm going to make a cube, move it into position, and there are, over here you have your X-ray, you can toggle that on and off. You can also go to shading, X-ray. However, sometimes I find that the X-ray is a little bit too much, I can see through it too much, or I can't see through it enough. A good trick is just to put a new Lambert on it. For your final renders, cannot use a Lambert, but you can turn the transparency up on it so it's like X-ray is on, but you have control of how transparent it is. So it can be just a wireframe or completely opaque or anywhere in between. And it gives you a little bit more control over what you are seeing. Now for this I want to extrude up, and I can't just select this top face from the front view. So an easy way of doing it is marquee select over the top and the side, so I get more than what I need. So I have everything except for the bottom selected. Now I'm going to shift and marquee select these middle 4 faces. Now I just have the top selected. I'm going to drag this up here, and then I'm going to just hold down shift and extrude it the rest of the way up. I'm going to have one there and then bring it, just scale it down. Next I'm going to use the insert edge loops. So shift right click, insert edge loop. I'm not going to have 9, let's bring that down to 4. I'm going to click it, and I'm going to bring the handle in just a little bit. I'm not going to match it exactly, but it's just going to give it a little bit more shape. Next, I'm going to make another cube. So shift right click, cube, drag this up. I'm going to put that same sign existing material. I believe it is Lambert 3. You should name your materials so you don't have to guess which one. So this is transparent. And I'm going to position it right over the handle. Go to face mode. You can hover over your object and go to face mode. Sometimes you accidentally get whatever object is behind it, depending on where your cursor is. But if you have your object selected and just hover over anywhere in the gray, hold down right click and go to face, it will go to face mode or vertex. So you can ensure that you're getting the right object selected. I'm going to do the same thing I did to extrude the handle up. Select these 5 faces and then deselect 4. And then I'm going to extrude. And then if you hold down G, G will repeat the last command, so you just press it once. I'm going to extrude it out and then do one more extrusion. I'm going to go to vertex and just reposition them to match the handle, or to the blade. Bring that up. And then face mode, I want these bottom 2 faces. So I'm going to select all of these faces and then deselect the front and the back faces right here. So I just have the bottom selected. Hold down shift and I'm going to do 2. Now this is at an angle, so if you hold down E, you can rotate to match that angle. And with my vertex mode, going to give it a shape. You can see there's a little bit of a crease or a ridge in this axe, so this middle line, this middle edge, it's going to follow it, and bring these in as well. Going to use multi-cut to put in one here and one here. You can use insert edge loop or multi-cut. Multi-cut, if you hold down Control it will put in a loop going all the way around. If you hold down shift, it will snap to, I believe it's 10%, 20, 30, 40, 50 in the center, and then the rest of the way. So you can put it in right at the center if you hold down Control and Shift, or you can just get it as close as you want just by holding down Control, and you can put it wherever you want. And you see I'm still in the multi-cut tool, so I hit W. I'm now in the transform tool, so I can select things again. And go to vertex mode and just reshape it a little bit more. And then for this side, I'm just going to extrude it out and scale it down. So right now, this transparency is up a little bit much, so I'm going to turn it down so I can see it. And obviously my axe is not yet sharp. I'm just going to go to face mode, select the first face, then I want to have all of these selected, so I'm just going to shift double click at the end, and it selects everything in between. And I can hold down or hit R to scale and scale it in, but it looks like this one has a little bit more of a taper. So I'm going to undo that and turn on soft select, which is B, as in boy. So hold it. My model gets a little bit, the edges get a little bit yellow. If I hold down B and left click and hold, and I drag left and right, my fall off goes up and down. I'm just going to have a little bit more of a fall off, scale it in, and now I have a nice taper. Always turn off soft select when you're done by hitting B again. For the handle, it's a little bit square for my liking. So first I'm going to scale it in a little bit that way. And then I'm going to put in an edge loop going around this way and around this way, cutting it in half. So go to multi-cut, holding down Control and Shift. Now I'm just clicking and in the center. There's another tool that we have not gone over in class yet, but it is very convenient, and it's called Edit Edge Flow. And with these corner edges selected, I'm going to hold down Shift and right click and go to Edit Edge Flow. And that will average out the distance between the edges. So you can see it went from being a square pretty much to a little bit rounded. And for what I'm doing, that is fine. I'm going to select these back vertices and scale it in a little bit. So I said in the beginning that shift right click is very helpful for modeling, but it's also helpful for UVing. So I'm going to UV this. Let's open my UV editor. And since I started with a cube, I have what looks like the default UVs for a cube. That and bring in my UV toolkit. And I'm going to start with a planar mapping. And I want it from the Z direction. So hold down Shift and left click on planar. I get my planar mapping options. Select Z and always have keep image width height ratio checked. Hit apply, and I have a side view of my axe. If I turn on checkers, the side looks great, but the top and bottom are stretched. And what I want to do is turn this into two separate pieces. I want to cut it, and the easiest way is to cut it down the middle for now. So I'm going to hold down Shift right click, go to multi-cut, and just put an edge right in the center. I'm holding down Control and Shift. The UV mode doesn't look any different. If I go to my edge mode in the 3D view, double click on that new center edge, you can see that it highlights in the UV editor, and it looks like this because it's the same as my orthographic view right now. and I want to cut this to turn this one object into two shells. Because right now, if I go to shell mode, UV shell, it selects the whole thing. I want this to be two separate pieces. So you can come over here and go to cut and sew and cut, or if you hold down shift right click, you have cut right here. So if you notice, the border gets a little bit thicker when you do a cut, shift right click, cut. That means that's now a border edge. It's no longer a sealed UV shell. So now if I go to UV shell, I have two separate pieces. One of them will be flipped. The second button will give you colors. This means it's facing the right way. This red means it is flipped. I believe there is a shift right click for flip. I forget where it is. But if you go to transform and hit flip. And now we have two separate pieces, but it is still stretched on the top and bottom. And to fix this, you would put an unfold on it. So you go to unfold and hit the unfold tool, or shift right click and go left and hover over where it says unfold with that little arrow, and then you go to unfold. If you're ever in a menu like this and you want to go back, you just hover over that first circle and it will take you back to the main menu. I'm going to go to unfold, and here I'm going to put another unfold on it. Now this is not perfect UVing. If you're doing it yourself, I'd recommend you can move and sew these together. Do shift right click. You can have move and sew. Move and sew is very similar to, if you go to cut and sew, to stitch together. It's basically stitch together and sew as one tool. So do shift right click, go to the top. This is with an edge selected. I have move and sew edges. Put it at the top, put that at the top, and I'm going to put another unfold on this. And again, these still aren't perfect UVs, but they are squares, and it's a quick way of doing it. For the handle, I'm going to put a quick cylindrical mapping on it. I don't want the top and the bottoms to be part of this cylindrical map, so I'm going to come to the side view, select all of the faces in this first section, and then deselect them so I just have the top, and do the same thing for the bottom. Select more than I need so I ensure that the bottom faces are selected, and then hold down shift and deselect them. So now I just have the top and the bottom faces selected. And I'm going to put a planar mapping on it. So shift left click on planar. This is going to be in the Y. Again, keep image width height ratio selected and hit apply. Going to move them up. And you see one of them is flipped. So you come down to transform and hit flip. There is a shortcut for that, I just don't remember where it is. And now you can see that my cylindrical mapping did not do a great job because these checkers are very stretched. But I'm going to zoom out, select the axe, blade, and the handle. Go to the UV shell mode, select everything, hold down shift right click, and come to layout, and then layout UV. See, it still did not do a great job because it kept this at the same proportion, so I need to put an unfold on this because this in reality is much taller. So shift right click, unfold, and unfold. You can see that it stretched out a lot, and now these are nice checkers. So if I select everything, shift right click, come down to layout, and layout UV. And now it's the same size checkers, and it is a lazy way to UV the handle, or the blade, but it does work pretty well, especially for demonstrating hotkeys. So shift right click is a great way to speed up your modeling and UVing workflow. You do not have to use them, but if you get comfortable with hotkeys, everything will go a little bit faster. So there's one more thing that I want to go over. Going to get rid of this and delete our beautiful axe. So when you extrude, you do whichever extrusion you do. If you ever want to undo it immediately, you can't just hit Z. That undoes the translation, but that does not undo the extrusion. So you have to undo twice in order to undo the entire command. So again, if you do extrude face and you translate it over, if you hit Z, that only undoes the translation. So you have to do undo twice in order to get rid of the extrude tool. This is very, very important because if you do not undo that translation, it doesn't look like anything's happened. But if you hit 3, you'll notice that you have extra faces. So you have these 4 faces that you cannot see because they have no volume, they have no surface area, they are basically hidden. So if you move this over, they are there. And this is called a double extrusion because you have 2 faces or multiple faces right on top of each other. And you'll get a lot of points marked off on your assignment if these are found. It also makes your UVing much trickier. You have extra faces, so if you bring it into a game engine, it will slow down because there's more geometry and it's not being used. So if you ever undo an extrusion, make sure you undo the translation and the actual command. A good way to tell if you have double extrusions is if when you smooth a cube, for example, you know that it should turn into a sphere. If you smooth a cube with a double extrusion on it, you will see a flat piece of it. This is helpful for more than just cubes. Anytime you hit 3 and you see something that doesn't look quite right, like it smooths differently than the rest of your model, you should always make sure that you have no double extrusions. You can also use something called vertex face. If you hold down right click, go to vertex face, it will give you something that looks a little bit weird. This is what a cube should look like. You have 6 faces and nothing else. If you have a double extrusion, it will have a line going around the face with double extrusions, and this shows that there's a face that has no surface area. So that's another way of telling that it is wrong. You can't do anything about it in vertex face, and when you have a complicated model, it's hard to see because you can have thousands of faces, but it is a helpful visual way of spotting bad geometry. But it's a little bit easier just to hit 3 if you know how your model should smooth. You can see that there is something wrong there. Very important that you do not have double extrusions.